Morning, everyone. This is our quarterly update for where we are with our cloud software delivery. Today's topic is primarily going to be data migration. So you may have been on the last call where our focus was on AML and client onboarding. So I'll give you a little bit of an update on that, but then I'll be handing over to Dan to focus mainly on data migration. So to give a bit of an opener for a start, so this session should be about 60 minutes. I think our content is probably going to be about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, so there's plenty of time for questions. If you do have any questions, you should have a little button that says Q&A, so please ask your questions via the Q&A panel, and then we'll, at the end, go through them. And also feel free to chat amongst yourselves and with us if you want to, apart from questions, obviously, which should be in the Q&A panel via the chat function. It is being recorded and it will be shared with you as well, so you've got it to keep and watch back as well. So to introduce myself, my name is Mark Purdue and I look after the product management team that looks after compliance products. I've been with Wolters Kluwer for about 15, 16 months now. But in total, I've worked in tax technology for about 17 years in product management roles. Prior to that, I was in practice, and then for my sins, prior to that, I was at HMRC. With me today, and Dan will introduce himself in a moment when he starts talking about data migration, is Dan, who's one of our lead product managers, and his main focus at the moment is migration and how we get your data and you from where you are today to the cloud when it's right for you. In terms of an agenda, I'm going to give you an update following the last meeting we had back in, I think it was September, give you a bit of an update on where we are. Then I'm going to hand over to Dan so he can talk through data migration, and then we will deal with any questions. So to give you a bit of an update, I'm going to just share the strategy slide that I share each time I start one of these sessions. The actual image itself has changed, but certainly the sentiment behind it is exactly the same. So overall, for Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting UK, our product strategy is focused primarily on our journey to the cloud, making sure that when you as a firm need to be in the cloud, we've got the tools and solutions that you need. And the way we're going to achieve that, one way is via global assets. So as you know, we're part of a global organization. We do have software around the globe, and where it's appropriate, we will use that global asset rather than start from scratch and write our own product for the UK, where that's appropriate. Connectivity, that's one of our key drivers. So that's API first. So with an on-premise product, primarily you interact with the software via a user interface, so you type data in. One of the advantages of cloud is that will still be available to you, but equally you've got API access, so you can input data, extract data, report on data, all via APIs, particularly with third-party products as well. World-class customer experience is always central to what we're doing. And for me, the key driver for us moving to the cloud is the automation and AI. If what we're doing in the cloud doesn't benefit you in some way in terms of efficiency, or improving the quality of your work, then really we've sort of missed the mark in terms of what the benefits of cloud are. And all around this, there's innovation. So as a product management team, we're tasked with making sure we constantly think about innovation. So the fact that we do something in on-premise doesn't mean we're going to do exactly the same thing in the cloud. If it's an appropriate approach, then obviously we will, but we're always thinking about, is there a better way of doing these things? I've spoken to you a few times about our journey to cloud. What I haven't done is talk about the brand name. So if you were at our customer conference in London, which was last month, maybe the month before, date escapes me, apologies, we launched our cloud brand. It's a global brand, so iFirm, you may be familiar or have heard of iFirm because of its existence in other regions, but our UK brand is going to be iFirm. So our personal tax, accounts production, practice management tools, etc., will all be under this CCH iFirm umbrella. And really, what is iFirm? I mean, I've got it up on screen, but it is a collaborative. So we're building it with sort of a collaborative approach of thinking about how you and your clients are going to interact with each other. So it's a collaborative cloud solution to help you grow, become scalable and seamless. And we're going to make it as versatile as we can to help you navigate and letting you keep what you need and improve the way you work. So the fact that you do a task in personal tax in on-premise doesn't mean that we're going to be prescriptive and insist that that same task is done in the same way. We're going to give you that flexibility so you can really think about how you work. So the journey so far, just a recap of what we spoke about last time. So our now and next, the topic of the last time we spoke was around AML. And also at the same time, I mentioned that we were working on personal tax accounts production, and Ben also extended his AML discussion into what's coming next for AML, which is client onboarding. And as I've just said, we're sort of launching the iFirm brand. So we launched the brand at our customer conference in London. And over the coming months, you'll see more and more information around it. There'll be topics on our website, etc., etc. And then in the future, I've called out a few here, but there will be more obviously as well, but corporate tax, time and fees, and cloud audit. So we're building what we've got in on-premise today and building that out on the cloud. Last time we spoke, Ben spent some time going through the AML roadmap, what his focus is today and what's coming next and in the future for AML and client onboarding. So what I'm now going to do is just give you a very quick update on that to give you an indication of where we are. So the focus today of where we are is still on this release 1 of AML. Okay, so it's this standard push of a basic AML check from Central into iFirm, perform an AML check, and then get a report out. So what does that mean? Since we last spoke, the beta is currently active. We've got 9 Wolters Kluwer firms actively engaged with the product, CCH iFirm AML. And to date, they've run 75 AML checks. Okay, so you can see it's a real product. It's not just something that we talk about and isn't there yet. It's a real product that still exists, that already exists. And already we're reacting to that beta feedback. So there's some suggestions around improving the user flow, which we're looking into, and integrating that report that comes out the back of AML, integrating that back into the CCH Document Center, and also being able to run AML on contacts as well as clients. And we're still on track. The date that Ben mentioned to you last time was that our product launch was going to be in Q1 2024, and we're still on track for that date. So that very much is my update on where we've been from when we last spoke, and I'm now going to hand over to Dan to talk you through the data migration approach.
Thank you, Mark. So I hope you will agree that we're actually making some very exciting progress with our products into the cloud. And we talk about our cloud strategy all the time, what our new products will look like, how they'll look, how they'll work. But one of the questions that's often raised is, what does that mean for me as a customer or for you as our customers? So what I'd like to try and do today is just give a little bit of context for you as you take your journey to the cloud along with us. So my name's Daniel Faulkner. As Mark introduced me at the beginning, I'm a lead product manager at Wolters Kluwer. I've been here for 6 years, working in various different projects, and I'm proud to be part of the product management team. And I'm currently working on the strategy and the plan to deliver your cloud migration journey. And I'd like to share some of the insights of that with you all today. But before I do, I just want to get you to imagine for a second. Imagine an accountancy firm that have been managing their clients' financial data and the tax records using on-premise software and physical paperwork for decades. They're known for their expertise, but they're increasingly struggling to keep up with the changing landscape of tax regulations and clients' expectations. They're now faced with a need for growing efficiency and security within their practice, and so they decide to migrate their operations to the cloud. By doing so, they gain the ability to securely store and access sensitive financial data from anywhere while maintaining the highest levels of data security and compliance. With a cloud-based accounting software and collaboration toolset, their team can now work together seamlessly from anywhere. And this newfound flexibility allows them to serve their clients more efficiently, particularly during those peak tax seasons where pressures are tight. They also integrate data analytics tools into their workflow, offering proactive financial insights to their clients, which sets them apart in the industry. The cloud's scalability allows them to take on more clients without the need for extensive physical infrastructure. So they expand their services to include financial planning and advisory services. And this is all thanks to the cloud's ability to handle complex financial modeling and data analysis. This firm is not just surviving, but they're thriving thanks to their cloud transformation. And they've attracted a new generation of clients who appreciate the efficiency, transparency, and the personalized service they can now offer, all powered by the cloud. I hope that those in the audience will start to picture themselves in that story. So thinking about the future, where they can recognize the economies of scale, the benefits of the cloud. And we want to be the provider for you, which is why we're investing so heavily in our cloud. But just to set the current landscape, we know that you use CCH Central, our on-premise software, and it's incredibly powerful. It's been built for a long time to be the best tax and accounting suite that it possibly can be. And we know that as users of it, you've come to rely on it. But the software landscape is changing at an incredibly fast rate. With the likes of AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, there's a huge focus on the best user experience or simplification of processes. Across the ecosystem, there's now more APIs than ever before, with different applications talking to each other and an expectation that things integrate together. And there's this expectation of an access anywhere, zero cost infrastructure with services managed for you, that all these services meeting the latest cybersecurity threats and GDPR requirements. And we know that as customers, you expect all of these things. But the only way that we can meet the expectation in this evolving, rapidly evolving software landscape is by investing in the cloud, which is why we've invested so heavily. But it also means why we need to consider how we're going to transition you from where you are today over to get realize the benefits of that cloud, i.e. your migration. But we also recognize that as our customers, you are all unique. So as I say, CCH Central is a really, really powerful bit of kit, and it's evolved over 20 years to become that leading suite of tools. And what makes it so powerful is how configurable it is, how it can be adapted to your specific needs, your specific use cases. CCH Central really comes down to being like a connected toolbox of different pieces that you can bring together however you need in whatever combination you want. And just to emphasize that point a little more, at Wolters Kluwer, we've got over 3,000 customers using our CCH Central suite. And across that customer base, there are more than 250 unique product combinations. That's different products that are purchased from us within that suite that are put together in different combinations. And that's not even taking into account the fact that even within Central, it's so configurable. There's countless other integrations, third-party system integrations that you might have that we need to think about as we think about your migration to the cloud. And so we have to think about the software very carefully to ensure we maintain that interconnected toolbox mentality as we move forward into the CCH iFirm world, which is where, again, migrations will be unique. So what do we mean by migrations? Well, what I'd like to do today is just talk about two options which are on the table. These two are options for you to choose between, but it's not to say these are the only options. So the first one I want to talk through is a phased migration, and the second one is a big bang approach. It may be that the names give it away a little bit. So a phased, by the name of it, is going to happen over a period of time. It doesn't happen all in one go, as opposed to big bang, which does. Let's delve into this in a little more detail. So when it comes to a phased approach, you'll have seen from user groups or from the customer conference that the plan at Wolters Kluwer is we're going to be releasing cloud products into the iFirm suite incrementally over a period of time. And the thought process here is that each of those products is designed to complement CCH Central and start eventually to offer you an alternative cloud-based version of Central products. And so the expectation is that you might start taking these products incrementally over a period of time as and when they become available. And therefore your use of CCH iFirm suite will increase over that same time period. With each product that we release, we'll make sure that we're transferring the data you need to utilize that product, that data coming from CCH Central as your master data set. And so incrementally, your data is being moved over to the iFirm suite, but you're still mastering it all within Central. But by implication, if you are using the cloud more, if your users of the software are using the cloud more, thus your use of CCH Central is going to decrease over a period of time. And there's going to come this point in the center where the two lines cross, where actually you're using the cloud more than Central. And from that point on, it really comes down to a decision. When are you ready to make that final switch to just tweak the last bit of data over so that you become 100% cloud ready with cloud usage with our software? And throughout this time period, your business, your processes are organically growing to become more ready for that switch when it does come. You start to use the software incrementally, maybe one client at a time, maybe one product at a time, but all the while the data is moving organically so that when it comes to the time where you do switch off CCH Central, everything's just working already for you. And this, when we paint the picture in this way, seems like a really no-brain approach, but it doesn't necessarily suit every business, and we're aware of that. And so I want to also demonstrate the alternative mindset that we're thinking about, that of a big bang approach. So a big bang may fit your practice better if, say, you have quite strict governance, or you don't wish to have two different data sets managed on different servers at the same time, one in the cloud, one in your on-premise service, CCH Central, be that hosted or be that actually on a server that you own. And in this case, let's imagine that we're still going to release products incrementally over time, but you know that the first 6 products that we release, after that 6th product is released, that gives you, within your practice, everything you need in order to move over to the cloud. So you'll wait until that 6th product comes out, but in that interim time, it's important for you to start to get ready, get prepared for that switchover point. That is getting your data ready, getting your teams ready with the right training. But throughout the time, your use of CCH Central will continue until there comes a point where actually you are ready to make that switch. I like to use the example that perhaps on a Friday, you're going to cease the use of Central. Over the weekend, you'll transition your data to the cloud, and on a Monday, your staff come in and start using CCH iFirm. Now, that's probably a bit of an unrealistic example, but it lays the point that really what we're getting is a use of CCH iFirm overnight with a switchover in a big bang approach. And what does that mean for the data? Well, we have to load the data all in one go as well. So there's a big bang, everything changes all in one go, and this is why we refer to it as big bang. And I'm demonstrating these two different approaches because there may be some variation of these which suits you and your practice. But at Wolters Kluwer, we're making sure that our software will adopt to either way to allow you to choose what's best for you and your way of working. Now, when I talk about migrations, we're often thinking about the end result, the use of software, the switch over from on-premise to cloud. But actually, there's more to it, and there's more considerations that you have to think about. It's not going to be without challenges, and it's important that we start to think about those up front to help us make sure that the transition is smoother. The first one is one of software difference. So we've been creating CCH Central, as I say, for more than 20 years. It has a certain look and feel about it, which has evolved throughout that time. But with the CCH iFirm suite, we have an opportunity to adopt the current industry best practices with the entire suite. And so there will be differences in how the software looks and feels, trying to drive in that innovation and that automation throughout the whole suite so that different parts talk to each other in a slightly different way. The end result will still be that you can do the job that you need to do, but the way that you do it, the way that it looks and feels may be different. And again, we have to think about this in planning and preparing for the transition to the cloud. Secondly, coming back to that point of Central, it's been around for 20 years, and throughout that time, the number of data integrity checks has increased. So now there's certain fields within Central that you can add and they get validated at the point of insertion. Some of those fields weren't historically validated, And so you might have legacy historic data that's still in your system, which is garbage, it's rubbish. You might have email addresses in a name field or erroneous characters somewhere else because that's just the way you did it once upon a time. And if we think about that data cleanliness, it's going to impact how effective the migration will be where we do have that strict data validation. So really it's important to think about your data cleanliness now, because this could be a challenge going forwards. Thirdly, each of your practices, again, is unique. And you might have your own internal governance models that need to be met, various stakeholders that need to be brought on board before you're allowed to transition to a new piece of software. And so we need to think about this before undertaking the migration at all to ensure that we've met with the stakeholder needs and signed off any gated processes that you might have to ensure that the transition will be smooth without any legal or other governance blockers along the way. And fourthly, there's your processes. Within your business, you will have evolved over a period of time to carry out jobs in a certain way. You might have adapted your working processes to how CCH Central works. Equally, you might have adapted CCH Central to work with your internal processes. As we transition to new software which does things in a different way, those processes might need to be reconsidered. Are they still the most efficient way of working or not? And so again, planning and thinking about those things up front will help us ensure that we don't have the roadblocks when it comes to the actual software and data migration. And fifthly, perhaps one of the most difficult challenges to overcome is that of people. People, by their nature, often fall into two camps. One where people are willing to change and embrace change, and those that are resistant or unwilling to change. And for those that are resistant, that can cause a challenge to any change, be that a software migration, be that just a change of process. I'm sure you've all encountered this before. You might think, if the benefits of the cloud are so great and that the processes should be simpler, the user interface more easy to use, why would people be resistant to change at all? But there are factors that come into play from how people are, people's nature. Some people may fear a fear of loss, that if they carry out following the migration, they may be losing a job or a part of their job that they enjoy doing. Perhaps they like the way a certain piece of software works, or carrying out a little fiddly thing that they've come to become experts in, that they lose by moving over to the new software. Or maybe there's confusion that if people feel that their job is efficient as it is today, what's the point in changing? What's the benefit of a migration at all? What's in it for them? Why should it be a transition at all? Certain people may fear for their competence. They might have taken a long time to get used to a certain piece of software, a certain way of working, and perhaps they don't feel that they've got the competence to adapt to a whole new way, a new AI era of software. Perhaps there's a fear of more work. If on a daily basis your in tray is huge and you're always chasing to try and keep on top of your current workload, and then you're being told to move over to a new piece of software which involves more learning and therefore more work, this again can cause a resistance to want to adapt or want to migrate at all. And fifthly, one of a loss of control. If a migration can be forced upon you, if the software that you are using every day and are familiar with can just be switched over to a new piece overnight, what other impacts might that have for you in your working life? In fact, could it mean that you could become fearful for your role in the future? And to think about these factors, there are others as well, but just to concentrate on these, it's important to remember to bring those in your team along with you. So how can we do that? Well, where there's a fear of loss, it's important to anticipate how people might respond. Think about what their concerns may be, what they fear that they're losing, and give them time to absorb the changes that are coming. Try and stress the positives that are coming, but be honest with them about what's happening, why, and how it's going to benefit. in the long term. It could even be that what they lose, they gain more from in the future software transition. Where there's confusion, it's really important to consider why people might be confused and explain why the change is necessary. This will help them to engage with it positively. And if people aren't understanding why there's a benefit to changing, it's also important to address what the limitations are to continue in the current way of working. So to highlight to your team why you're making the change at all. Where there's a fear of lack of competence, try and think about the knowledge and the skills that you need to give to your team in the run up to and throughout the whole migration process. Give them time to come up with plans to help develop their own skills. Work with them individually and encourage them to come up with a development plan of their own where they think they might have gaps in their competence that you can work with them to address. With more work, it is important to recognise that there will be a period of additional work. And recognise that change is never perfect, and that there will be unexpected obstacles along the way. But if you can bring your team along with you to help them be part of the process, to help them identify potential obstacles and how to resolve them, they then start to feel part of the change and engage with it more positively. And because there is this additional workload, it's important to help your team prioritise what's important versus what's not, and acknowledge the hard work that your team undertake throughout this transition period. And finally, when it comes to a lack of control, that lack of control often comes with a lack of information. The more information you can provide, the more empowered people become. Where there's a gap in information, where you're not giving all the information that you need to your team, it's amazing how quickly that gap can get filled with rumour and gossip. And there's a fear that if you're holding things back, that the team feel like there's certain decisions that are being held back from them. So share as much as you can and be honest. If you've got any decisions that you've not yet made, be honest what those decisions are, so there's not that feeling of a lack of information being provided. And just remember, it's really important that you bring your team along with you as we go through this journey. And with that in mind, at Wolters Kluwer, we're mindful of this, and we are aware that we need to provide you with as much information as possible. We'll be here to help through our support services, for you to come to us and ask at the different various events that we run. And in parallel with our software delivery, we're ensuring that we are building up this resource of learning material, of online help, of training material that will be available to you all to engage with and bring your team along with you. And so thinking about the migration itself, what can we do now in preparation for when the software migration actually comes about? Well, I've prepared a bit of a checklist for you all to think about and to start considering within your own practices today. So firstly, think about how you're using your Wolters Kluwer setup. What are you using on a daily basis? Which aspects, which processes, which tools do you need and rely upon? Because once you've got an understanding and a mapping of what you're using and how, it will really help you when it comes to looking at our roadmaps to identify which parts of which products are right for you, and then which combination will allow you to make that decision to start transitioning over, be that with a phased approach or be that with the big bang approach. It's vital to think about that data that you've got in your central database. If you haven't done it already, going through a data cleanse exercise can be incredibly important for your business, because not only will it help when it comes to the data migration and the process migration, but it will also help you with the efficiency of your practice today. If you've got garbage data, your reporting becomes less efficient. You get less insight or visibility of the real working of your practice. And so having that data prepared and cleansed is a vital step as we transition over to the cloud, because if you were moving house, you wouldn't take your rubbish with you. So why would you do the same when it comes to moving software? Think about your business as a whole. How ready are you for the cloud? Not just within our software, but elsewhere. Do you have other tools, other integrations to CCH Central which aren't ready for cloud? Or are there people and processes that need to be adapted so that working online is more effective or easier for them all? Obviously, certain factors of this have become less relevant following COVID, but even so, how ready are you to move over to the cloud for all of your processes? Again, coming back to some of my earlier points, each practice is unique. And so you might have your own unique security considerations within how your software works, how it's secured, how it's locked down, that we need to work with you to ensure that we can give you the information that's necessary. Our software in the cloud is all built to meet the latest ISO 27001 standards. We do get the software penetration tested so that we can ensure that we're secure at all times. But what other considerations might you have within your firm that we need to provide information for to help you get to any of those governance models that might need to be met? And actually, when it comes to the point of switching over, perhaps I'm speaking to the converted already, but why you've got to think about your business continuity. For example, it would be highly unlikely for you to make a transition from your one piece of software to another during the busiest tax season. That just seems to be an unlikely event for you. So think about that transition time. When's going to be the best time for you to move over from one piece to another? Whilst we'd like to think that the migration will be seamless, there could be challenges or there could be issues along the way due to certain unforeseen aspects or certain configurations within your firm. So if that were to happen and the transition isn't as smooth as we'd like it to be, and there's a period of downtime, what's the impact of that going to be for your business? And so that, therefore, having that in mind will help you think about when is the right time for you to transition. And again, coming back to the people, thinking about including a plan for training and skill development is important as well. Build this into the process so that your team are ready to hit the ground running when the software comes about. If you're going through a phased migration, that might be fine to work incrementally client by client or product by product, but think about what skills and training is going to be necessary so that we can build the time in for that along the way. When it comes to testing, we do test our software in a range of different circumstances, but you might again have your own unique setup that we need to test within. So what are those testing requirements that you and your firm have that we need to meet with and to make sure that you are confident that the cloud software meets all of your process needs? If you can define those requirements, we can work with you to help create the right plan for you. And finally, think about your communications. The more information, the more communication you can provide throughout your business, the more likely your migration will be a success. Remember that migration is not about one person, one party carrying out all the work. It's a shared thing where we've got to get buy-in from everybody. This journey to the cloud for us means that we have to work with you as our customers to ensure that we communicate with you to explain what's happening. And that cascades down to within your practice, making sure that your teams know what's happening, when and why. And just remember that throughout this whole period, if you do have questions, we are here to help and to answer anything that we can to ensure that the migration will be a success. Because if you successfully migrate to the cloud, that's a success for us. And so finally, to summarize, we are building our cloud software suite. We're building with the latest innovation, the latest technologies to meet our strategy, which Mark outlined at the beginning. But there's no obligation for you to migrate. We're not forcing migration upon you. It's completely your choice of when that migration happens. But when you're ready, we're going to provide you with all the support that we can, all the trainings resources, the tooling to make sure that we can get data across and that the systems are working effectively and as effectively as they can for you. We'll have a range of different packages and migration solutions to offer, be this self-service or be this with guided processes. And we're looking forward to sharing the migration packages with you in coming months. But above all, preparation is going to be key. So preparing your data, preparing your team, making sure that we've got the right training plans in place. if we get that preparation right, when it comes to the point of transition, it will become a lot smoother and easier for everybody. And remember that this is a team approach, because it's not just you imparting a change upon the business. Those people that are using the software every day will need to understand and buy into this transition as well. So it's important to bring that team along with you as you migrate. And just to reiterate, we will be here to help and to provide a range of services, be that the software well integrated with CCH Central, be that tooling to help you get ready with your services and your systems, and be that help to make sure that the data is transitioned over to the cloud to make sure this is seamless for you. And as I say, we want to make this a success for you, because it's as important that you're successful in this migration. And so that brings me to an end. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Dan. There is a question from Holly, and I guess it's the when do we start this process type question. The question is, it'd be good to know exactly what we need to tidy in terms of data cleanliness within our database.
So I think there's a range of different aspects to answer this question. Really, the key thing is to try and make sure that you've got a good consistency to the data. So trying to do reports to make sure that you've got fields in consistent formats, to make sure that they're all aligned. That's probably the biggest data cleansing that can be carried out today. In addition, though, we are looking at creating tooling that will allow us to run reports within the central database to help with this process. But as I'd say, I'd start with that primary piece of looking at the fields that you've got and making sure that they're consistent across the entire database, because that will really help when it does come to that transition across.
Great, thank you. One other question which I'll take from Sarah, which is, where do we find the roadmaps mentioned in the previous slide? You're quite right. In this webinar and in this slide deck, we've not actually shared the roadmap, but in previous ones we have. And we did at our customer conference in London. So if you haven't got it from a previous one, then what I'll do is, when we share the recording and share the slides, I'll make sure we put a roadmap slide in there. So when you get the recording, you'll have a copy of the roadmap. Well, that is the only question we've got at the moment. So are there any other questions? Whilst you're thinking about questions, so a question from Claire: will the cloud products look different? Short answer is yes. Slightly longer answer is, with a tax product, there's only so many things you can do in terms of how it looks and feels. That's using tax as an example. You need to enter data, you need to see a form, you need to run reports, you need to submit it. But will it look like central personal tax? No, it's a completely different look and feel. Not in the last webinar, which was AML focused, but in the one before that, we did a run through of accounts production and personal tax as it stood at that time. So if you so that was where we showed what the tax product looks like. That does lead into something I was going to say, is this is our last webinar of this year, because obviously we're getting very close to the end of the year. We're going to continue these into next year, though. So what we will start to do, it will be more of a demo focus of progress. So certainly in the next webinar, you'll be able to start seeing what products look like if you haven't seen them already. Dan, I don't know if you would like to answer this one. Will there be data synchronization between the cloud and on-premise platform?
Yes, it's been designed to be complementary, so we will be moving data from one system to another. It won't be a true two-way sync, but we'll be moving just enough data to allow you to use the services you need when you need them. So as I mentioned earlier, as an example, personal tax is a great one. If you've got a client in CCH Central and you wish to carry out a personal tax return for that client in the cloud, then we'll synchronize and we'll move all that client's data over so that you can perform that personal tax return in the cloud. And then we can make sure that we've got feedback of the status of that back into Central to ensure that workflows and things continue. So whilst it's not a complete two-way sync, we are synchronizing the data you need to make sure that you can carry out the jobs to be done.
And then a question that's come through in the chat: will we receive a summary of the steps we need to take?
So we will provide that, yes, and we look forward to providing different packages, because there isn't, as I mentioned, there's no one size fits all. But what we can do is give recommended steps of what's important. We can certainly do that, and we'll look to do that probably in the early part of next year.
Great, thank you. And a question from Claire is: do we have cost comparisons versus current offering? So I guess the short answer is no, not yet. We're very much working on pricing. It will be certainly comparable. I mean, we do have to acknowledge that if we're hosting cloud software, our cost base goes up slightly and your cost base goes down slightly if you no longer have to have your own server, but they will certainly be comparative to the current pricing models. And as soon as we do have pricing, we will, of course, share them with existing. Okay, and this is a question from William. The concern always around cloud-based products is always that there can be short-term inability to get access due to local problems. Is it possible to continue working locally, and will this be updated once connection is re-established? So I guess we're talking about, are we going to have an offline mode in some of the products? Do you have a view on that, Dan?
I think it's a good consideration. At the moment, the products are purely web-based. Having that offline mode does add complexity when you start thinking about shared client bases and things like that. So at the moment, no, but it's certainly something that if it does become a huge pain point, we can certainly consider how we can resolve that one.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think that is it for now. So any more questions? Otherwise, we will bid you farewell and speak to you all in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.